We're good.
Great. All right. I'll get the party started. Thanks everybody for joining another episode of the OpenJS Foundation Security Collaboration Space meeting. Today's the 14th of August, 2023. And we do have an issue that has an agenda, but I guess before we get into that, do we have any announcements or anything? If not, we can get into gosh darn it. Ever since this Zoom update, I'm like getting an error that like my USB stuff isn't working, but it is. It's working fine. Leave me alone. Cool. So we can get into the agenda if we want, unless we want to start with any sort of progress update on the OSTIF efforts or anything like that. We just get into the agenda. What do you want to do?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's some items there that are related to OSTIF stuff, so
okay.
We can just jump in.
Cool. All right. Well, so let's see. What is the first agenda item here? It is issue 18. This is a milestone. Sbomb generation tooling best practices created. Ben or Jordan, you all want?
Yeah. So there's my general sense of the state of Sbombs, tooling, validation, consensus on formats, how you use them, is that we're like years away from being able to have a best practices guide. I just posted a link to an NPM RFC PR that was opened last week by a GitHub employee, where they want NPM to be able to generate Sbombs. It's just really unclear to me if it's probably going to land in NPM, but I mean, NPM has stopped doing its normal RFC call things. And so this is appearing to be another GitHub employee pushing something into NPM without NPM people and being involved, which is unfortunate. But nonetheless, even if this ships in NPM, it's not clear that I have no idea as a package author whether I need to make an Sbomb or not, because everything I make an NPM can make an Sbomb from is already in my package JSON. So what would be the point? An end application maybe could generate one, but and that seems useful. But as I mentioned in that PR, right, there's 7 types of Sbombs, and it's not clear because all we've had so far are executive or orders, I think, of describing potential future regulatory requirements, and it's not clear what those are going to be yet. And to meet the stated goals, I think you would need to have an Sbomb that describes all of the things that are in the application, another one that describes all the things that are in your build tools, in your build process, another one that describes the environment in which you ran these things, like these build tools. And that's 4 right there. And I don't know of any standard way to describe, to be able to determine if these exist, what they should be called, if they're valid, how you could reproduce them. So if we have those answers, great, we should put them in a document. But I don't think anyone has those answers yet. And so I feel like it's just too early to try and make a document like this.
2 thoughts. One,
yeah,
I have not seen an ask yet for the extensive examples that you gave, like in Sbomb for the infrastructure that builds the package.
So there's a whole paper that a whole presentation that was given by, what's her name? I want to say Kate. Yeah, Kate Stewart gave a presentation at Sbomb-Rama a month or 2 ago, and she's written a whole white paper on these 7 types of Sbombs, and like that. So like there may not be any demand for them yet because people probably don't know about them. But like the reality is that the purpose of an Sbomb is to know what possible vulnerabilities could be in the things that you're using.
Right.
And you can't know that unless you know, because like if you know about all the components that are in it, but you don't know about the build process, then that doesn't solve any problems, because I can just inject something through the build process and it won't show up in your Sbomb of describing all your dependencies. So like you have to have all those things if you want to have complete security or complete knowledge around this stuff. And if you have incomplete knowledge, then I don't think there's much point in having any. Like in the sense of Sbombs, right?
Well,
and as opposed to like I think it's important to know what dependencies are in your project, but like if I have a node application, I have a lock file already. And if any of those pieces have a CVE, I'll already have that indication. And so what more do I need? What more would be provided by an Sbomb that I don't already have in the lock file for my application? And the only answer I can come up with that is describing the machine that did the building. And that Sbomb is not even what NPM is planning to generate.
I mean, my impression is that like, while I don't disagree that it seems silly to have a lock file and an Sbomb file that are essentially saying the same exact thing. My impression is that the industry is going towards Sbomb regardless of the technology of the platform. And so even though it might be duplicated, it would probably still be a good idea to move in that direction.
Yeah.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
also
I mean, having.
connected-
Oh, go ahead.
I also, Kate Stewart reached out to me last week on a project related to Sbombs, and I connected her to Beth Griggs just to kind of get a debrief and think through next steps, but we can have her come talk as well. But they want to start with Node as the first ecosystem, but they want to, it's essentially, there's a group in formation that's looking at doing some prototype examples with OSCAL controls. That's a NIST thing. Open source security controls assessment language. So
Yeah. I mean,
So
go ahead.
so yeah, I mean, if it's an NPM package, presumably your lock file will contain what you're shipping, or at least inclusive of what you're shipping. Often contains a lot of things that aren't actually shipped, right? The Sbomb is going to be agnostic though, right? It's not going to be specific to the ecosystem. It's meant to be an Sbomb, you know, it's meant to be usable for different types of projects, as well as mono repos, right? Where you might be shipping, you know, one, for lack of a better word, package that actually consists of several other packages. As for like, there's all of these different versions. I mean, that's true. There are competing sort of Sbomb formats, but I mean, if you look at like some of the more major ones, right? Cyclone DX is the one that I would tend to favor. I'm not on the Cyclone DX team. I have no horse in the race, but there are validation tools. There's a specification for it. And you know, I would caution against letting the unattainable perfection get in the way of having something useful and substantive to folks that want to consume you know, whatever entities want to consume Sbombs for projects.
Yeah, I'm not trying to suggest that we shouldn't do anything until we have everything. I more was trying to suggest that it's great to do iterative work when you know what the complete picture will roughly look like. And I don't think anybody knows that. And more to the point, if NPM generates Sbombs, I don't know what like there's a few validation tools you can run, but like, I don't think that they tell you that the information's right. They only tell you that it's well formed. And I'm not sure how valuable that is. And like, I just generate, like, if you have a package lock file, you can determine if it's valid by installing it and trying to run the tests or whatever. But like, you don't have that ability from an Sbomb. It's just an attestation.
But you're arguing it from your, like, if you are wondering if it's accurate or valid, but if it becomes a requirement, does it matter? It's that, again, the perfection getting
Well,
into
yeah, it
one.
matters that I satisfy the requirement. And
Yeah.
if the requirement is just have a file that is a valid format, then sure, but I can make that with an empty file that passes the validator, right? So like, presumably the requirement is going to eventually map to the actual security properties they want to have it speak to.
Mhm.
And in order to have that be the case, we have to have a tool that can tell me before I publish my thing that my Sbomb is going to meet the legal requirement.
Mhm.
But the legal requirements we don't know what those are going to be yet. And we don't have any tools that'll tell me that it's anything more than well-formed yet. And so like, I guess it's fine that NPM is going to ship something, right? Because like that can iterate over time, but it's more like, I think the time to be telling practitioners to do stuff is when the complete picture is known, even if we're 10% of the way there.
Can we help shape the requirement? You know, the federal government just put out the request for information. Why don't
Yes.
we inform? I mean, this is the group to do that, right? So,
Yeah, I mean, that's my thinking too. This is an opportunity to lead and push things forward and you know, along the path, discover all the things, or at least point out, highlight, well, yeah, we did this, but really what good does it do? Okay, well, now let's do this, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that is absolutely something I think we should be paying attention to. But writing a document for practitioners, I think, is a step beyond that.
Yeah, I think that's maybe the issue here is we're talking about implementing something for ourselves or whatnot, and like giving best practice guidance, which maybe the guidance isn't there yet because there's a lot of holes and stuff, is maybe what you're saying, Jordan. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So
Yeah.
it's the best.
I definitely think we should be talking about it. I just don't think we should be telling other people to do stuff about it yet.
Yeah. I get that. That makes sense.
so we push it up before we push it down and out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So this issue is a milestone for one. So it's a bigger picture thing, but it's Sbomb generation / tooling best practices created. I mean, maybe this should be, you know, maybe there are other issues that are more specific that we can get into rather than talking about the bigger picture stuff here. That is conflating two things that are, you know, one is maybe doable and one's maybe not at the moment. What are your thoughts about that, Ben, in terms of your picture of the project management aspect of it all?
Yeah, I think it's important for us to have something concrete at the end of the quarter. And it's unclear to me what that should be at this point. Like, you know, the intent here is to help folks that work on JS projects. So if we take that approach, you know, a possible concrete deliverable out of this might be just an analysis of the current state of Sbombs and saying, hey, here's what we think you should do at this point, right? And that can evolve over time. So maybe there's like an initial analysis that has to be done and be like, look, there's all this stuff happening in the space right now, but we as the experts in this field suggest you do this for now.
So that actually makes sense to me, because we can give some minimal kind of best practice requirements, which would be for applications, have a lock file. And for packages, we would say, don't bundle dependencies. Make sure everything is listed in your package JSON. And then, you know, we could say something lighter around like avoid dependencies that aren't pure JavaScript or WASM or something for the JavaScript ecosystem. So like avoid compiled dependencies, not because they're necessarily inherently bad, but because they're much more complex to consume and there's a lot more dependency trees that can be pulled in as a result. Something pretty concise and simple like that, I think and people already kind of follow that anyway, but that leaves the ecosystem in a state where the thing you generate the Sbomb from has as much information as you could get, short of people providing more. So that seems reasonable to me.
Do people already do that? Do we know?
Yeah, I mean, NPM since version 5 has had a lock file by default everywhere. I explicitly turn it off in all my packages, but I would like, it should always be on in an application. And compiled dependencies are largely like discouraged and have been for a long time because they take so much longer to install and compile and download stuff, and they're harder to manage. So it's there's some of unavoidable compiled dependencies in core parts of the ecosystem that are highly used, but like the quantity of packages that have them are very small, like that have them directly are very small. So like I think most people do already follow that, and I don't think it would be controversial because I don't think anybody needs the guidance, but we could certainly state that, and it would be keeping things in the right direction.
Great.
So it sounds like, so does that seem like an okay scope for this for folks here? And like, I think the takeaway, if there's agreement, would be there's going to be a draft document that Jordan will create and come to this team with, with an ask for feedback in a week or two, something like that.
Yeah, that sounds great to me. And it would be, I think, really good to have, to have it, so basically the things that we don't know, still call that out. The things that, are in flux or that will be figured out later, like, kind of express that as well. And this sort of documentation, I think, would be good.
I think that's a really good call out, especially because like we have this idea of Sbomb generation and tooling best practices essentially through our entire contract with OSTIF. Not very well defined. It's just the same bullet. But I think what that means to me is that like there are certain points in time where this document will need to be revisited and updated with new guidance, right? So it's a living document.
Yeah, and I think it also could be those spots could be areas where people could jump in and help, either with more research or to help build out tooling or what have you.
Well, and I could also pretty easily make some blank sections with to-dos, like, as a package publisher, should you ship an Sbomb with your application? Yes or no? If you should, or with your package, if you should, what criteria should it meet? Right? Like those are TBD. And then like, if you're shipping an application, like, we could leave it vague, but like make it clear that there will be future advice there as the answers to those become apparent.
Yeah.
And are there any other areas that like apply to other ecosystems that would create unintended consequences to the JavaScript ecosystem? Like, do we need to say, if there's mandates happening up here, don't do this for us because that would not work? Or do you worry about some of these compliance issues being cookie cutter across ecosystems? Or
yeah, let me see if I can even rephrase that a bit in the sense of, and tell me if I'm thinking along the same lines as you, Robin, but like there may be things coming from OpenSSF that don't apply to us too, that we may want to call out and say, this is a best practice for other communities. For the JavaScript community, this doesn't apply for this reason or something like that.
Yeah.
So let me just say really quickly, because I had a thought, Jordan, it would be great if we did put something like this together, because I've been crazy busy with IBM work, but that's starting to settle down, and I would love to help create other opportunities for folks to get involved and invite people to get involved. And so if we had stuff like this laid out and they could see areas that they could help flesh things out, that would be great. So thank you.
Okay.
Cool. Chris?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to mention there's the OpenSSF security and tooling working group has a special interest group within that's for Sbomb everywhere. And this group, the kind of the mission is Sbomb standardization and consensus from within the open source community is integral to the adoption of universal constructs that reveal themselves via the exploration of use cases beyond a compliance checkbox. But generally is to improve Sbomb tooling and training and to encourage adoption. I'll note that the two formats that they have anointed are Cyclone DX and SPDX is the other one. Couldn't remember that one earlier. And some of our colleagues that went to the White House meeting about this, because we were talking about the CISA request for feedback earlier was mentioned.
Mhm.
The three overarching goals from that meeting were securing open source software production, focused on preventing security defects and vulnerabilities in code and open source packages, improving vulnerability discovery and remediation, improving the process for finding defects and fixing them, and shorten ecosystem patching response time, shorten response time for distributing and implementing fixes. And what the group is working on are the requirements needed to build use cases using Sbombs that are clearly understood, documented, and implemented in current Sbomb specifications, friction-free open source tools that generate Sbombs that meet these requirements, and readily accessible education awareness and implementation guidance and third-party support. Among others, I can go on and on with the scope of this effort. But it is worth keeping an eye on what this group is producing in this space.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and if you find things that you think are really important to call out as that parallel effort goes, please keep us posted.
Yeah, as far as formats, the NPM PR is planning to generate all known formats, which is 2 at the moment. And the general sense I've had is that the LF people prefer SPDX, but a lot of developers seem to prefer Cyclone DX, but they're also not equivalent. So like,
you mentioned something really appropriate earlier, which was that there's no way to verify. You know, you can validate the format of the SBOM. There's no way to verify the correctness of the SBOM, and this is absolutely true. And anybody that really wants to trust the SBOM that they're looking at needs to generate it themselves. So if NPM or whoever else wants to package an SBOM for easy consumption, for analysis tooling and stuff, great.
Yeah.
Anybody that's really concerned with what is the actual content of what they're shipping are going to be generating their own SBOMs from it, and multiple of them, because they have different outputs, not just in format, they can have different results. And then if you really care, you're also doing binary analysis as well, and not just trusting these tools.
And that point, I think, solidifies the intuition I've always had here, which is that anyone who's not developing an end product is unlikely to actually be making Sbombs ever. That in fact, that anyone who's making a library or a package or something is probably not going to care about Sbombs. They're only going to care that their eventual end users can generate an Sbomb for them and their dependencies. And so so if that's true, then as a package author, what I would want is a tool that tells me, hey, if someone uses me and makes an Sbomb, is there anything I need to do to make it less hard for them? And as soon as that tells me that I'm good, I don't give a shit about Sbombs ever again. And I just put that in CI and I'm done. And then they can just generate it properly at the end. So that's, I believe that that's the case. And assuming that that remains the case, then I think that's the best outcome for the majority of the JavaScript ecosystem is, here's a tool, run it in CI, and if it passes, you're good. Don't do anything else, because then end users will be able to generate all the Sbombs that they need. But it's not clear to me that that tool exists yet. And I'm not even certain that I'm right about this intuition. I just, haven't seen any disproof of it yet.
Cool.
Well, our Sbomb milestone for the Sovereign Tech Fund, it does carry forward quarter by quarter as an evolution. So maybe we can just give them a heads up on what our first milestone will how it will take shape. I don't think we have to adjust our scope of work or anything, but cool.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you, Robin.
I just said I like it. I like the approach.
Okay, good. Yeah, and I wonder, Ben, if this changes this issue that we have, or I guess you'll work through it and we'll see what's on the agenda next week.
Yeah, I think the concrete next step is for Jordan to just look at that issue as it's currently written and rewrite it to capture the scope that we discussed. Right.
Okay.
Cool. All right, where did my agenda go? One of these windows, here it is. Okay. Great. All right. So moving on then. And you know, if you're able to, I'm curious how the NPM thing, our RFC continues as well. So maybe we can check in on that next week too. Right on. So the next item on the agenda here is this is issue 50, get feedback on draft OpenSSF CII best practices badge for JS projects. I know this draft has been around for at least a week. Any news here or updates? Anybody get a chance to dig into it further?
I got a lot of feedback on it from Ben and have not addressed it yet, but plan to do that this week.
And again, this one we
Yeah.
didn't make it public. So if you want access, you gotta ask Jordan. Joe, I gave you access while you're out, but if anyone else wants it,
yeah, and I think
Yeah.
I've gotten once like I've addressed Ben's feedback, I'm comfortable making it public. I just didn't want to do that like right before I went on vacation. But yeah, and then we can get further feedback from whoever. Yeah.
Great.
you want a deadline, Jordan, for feedback? Like feedback by
In the sense that I hope it motivates everyone to take a look at it. It would be great if I could get feedback by the end of this week.
let's go for that then. Yeah.
Great. So excellent. Moving on, the next issue is number 46. This is having a centralized signing tool for our tool chain. We created this issue 3 weeks ago based on the conversation we're having. You know, I haven't had an opportunity to even start to look at this, but I think we were talking about, you know, wanting to break out like categories and stuff. Am I thinking of this one, or is it the other one? It's the tool chain, and this one's prescriptive. Okay, so there's a follow-on issue, which is 45, which is create a prescriptive best practices tool chain. And I'm not sure the difference between these two. I mean, I guess one is having our own centralized one, but we probably want to have the best practices sorted out first before we start thinking about building our own. I'm not sure.
I think that's right. If you look at the comment on 45, I think I captured the next steps from last week, where it was basically create categories, decide on options for each, decide on a recommendation for each category, and then as a bonus, like create an example project. I'll put the direct link here.
Yeah.
I think this was captured from the discussion last week. But yeah, maybe we want to get rid of the other issue or somehow collapse them.
Yeah, or at least the other one doesn't need to have the agenda label on it, and we can get to that once.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll take the agenda label off of this one. It does have the security dest F one on, so that will remain. So, all right, cool. Well, Ben helpfully created a Google Doc that we can start to capture like what categories we would be thinking about here. And then can start to kind of build something out from there for a tool chain, best practices tool chain. I don't know if you're, I assume you're getting some thoughts as you work through your work, Jordan. Is that accurate, you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah. I think there's a lot of things that, I mean, the claim is that it's hard to create a secure JS project from scratch. I think it's not hard to do it, but it's hard, it's easy to mess it up along the way. So like, you know, we can give some basic advice of like, use two-factor, don't put secrets in the repo, turn on branch protections, you know, etc. But you know, and then there's a few more granular things like, you know, but like essentially that, and then, but it's more that security is a very complex and nuanced thing, and like it entirely depends on what the project domain is and how complex it is, and like as for like which types of security problems it can introduce. So like I'm at some point where it's just going to be get security feedback and have have a way people could privately report vulnerabilities for the inevitable time when you do something wrong, like, and which is fine, but that's, you know, it's not going to be very, it's going to be, you know, not going to be very whelming at that point for best practices. But it's still something we can write, right? Like it's still
Yeah, well, I
edible.
mean, I know that there's like the NPM like best practices doc.
Mhm.
And I don't know if we, you know, if it would be helpful for folks to like kind of turn that into some sort of checklist or something.
Yeah. And that, I mean, I helped review that doc as well. So like it's open for iteration if there's something that needs tweaking. I can work with Laurent who authored it.
Cool.
That Miles and Laurent did it?
Definitely Laurent. Miles reviewed it as well. There was someone else who was authoring it who I'd have to pull up the PR to remember the name, but yeah.
Okay. And
So it should be in good shape, but like, you know, it's not set in stone.
Yeah, and it's been a while since I've looked at it, but if I remember correctly, it had a lot of, you know, just sort of best practices like you were talking about, Jordan. Does it have any guidance on like tool chain related aspects, or is it more like, you know, protect your branch and stuff?
It's also been a while since I've looked at it, but I think that it's more about publishing your package and metadata and less about GitHub repo management. And we would want to probably address both of those. And I think that if it does mention any specific tools, my guess is that it's in the context of like, do a thing in this generic category. Here's an example tool that fits it. And it wouldn't be very prescriptive about which tool people use.
Yeah.
What I like about this is once it's done, then we use our channels to really get it out into the community, right? So.
But should it be optimized for, I mean, along with the tool chain, you said the GitHub stuff wasn't as included as much, but should it be optimized for gaining the higher scores through the scorecard of setting branch protections and that kind of stuff, such that people are better prepared to get a badge from OpenSSF?
Sort of, but the best practices badge I think is good. The scorecard, it's been almost 2 years, and there's been a lot of feedback I've given that has not been addressed, and I'm hesitant to turn everything into a gameable system especially when the metrics aren't ironclad or universal. But I think that all those best practices will increase someone's scorecard score. I'm hesitant to be enthusiastic about like making the scorecard score be the primary goal, because I don't agree with all of its metrics.
I don't want to, be provocative in any way, but is scorecard forkable and, make JS related changes that would, be much more focused on our community?
It's certainly forkable. But if you want to contribute, it's almost all volunteers that are working on it at this point.
Yeah, what if it were to be forked? Like, what kind of the work is it though? Is it like tooling work or is it like config work? You know what I mean? Like, because I don't want to.
I don't know. Well, keep in mind it's written in Go.
Yeah. So it's.
So if you don't love Go, maybe you don't want to.
Yeah.
Maybe you're not interested in doing it.
All right.
Well, that's part of the problem with any tool, right? Is if it's not written in the language of the ecosystem it's affecting, it's going to get a dearth of contributors from that ecosystem.
Yeah. Ulysses? Sorry, hand up.
Yeah, I was about to say, like they are working on a new version of the API for the scorecard, and you actually are going to be able to choose which things you want to include in the score or not. Even you can have custom scores, like you can have your own checks. Let's say, I think they call it probes in the new version. So yeah, you can customize it. So maybe it's a good chance for us to define what groups are okay for the JavaScript ecosystem as a thing, and then we can get rid of, like fuzzing, for example, things like that are not super relevant for many of the typical Node.js projects. So maybe that way we can take a little of ownership, and we don't have to fork it. and maintain it and so on. So yeah, I think So someone of the team made a demo. I think Laurent made a demo in the security working group a few weeks ago, like actually maybe a couple of months. So I can find the recording and set it back in the notes, because it was quite interesting. So you can see how that runs more or less, but it's ongoing discussion. So if you're interested to follow up on this, I can bring some news when I have more updated ideas.
The thing that I think would be most interesting for that is if we could sort of make a like JavaScript scorecard package scorecard dashboard or something, because like the fact that people can make up their own scores is great for enterprises, but like people are going to look at this, they're going to look at the thing they can point to, and other people are going to be like, your score sucks. And if people could say, well, actually, that's the universal score. If you look at the JavaScript score, I'm kicking ass. Like then we're good. And then there's no weird gamification from the defaults they've chosen universally. And like that capability you're talking about is a great way to tie into that. So that sounds very interesting.
Steve?
I would say from the enterprise perspective, we are using Scorecard, and we are picking and choosing the actual checks that we care about based on the ecosystem. So something like that would actually be kind of helpful, as long as it's consistent and it's extensible for every ecosystem too, and relevant, because we're finding some checks they aren't relevant no matter what ecosystem to us. We just don't care. And then some we care so specifically on that we weight them very high.
Would you share your stack ranked check things?
I don't know if I can share all of that, but I can point you to the checks we care about, and it's around maintainability, code review, and there's one other one, the dangerous workflow.
Chris?
Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm not on mute. Sorry. I just wanted to mention, somebody had mentioned earlier about best practices, and had mentioned like GitHub protection settings. So OpenSSF has best practices working group. So there's lots of documents with that. There's best practices in general, and then there are specific best practices guides for source control management or whatever. SCM is like an overloaded acronym, and I don't remember which one we settled on for it, but and then I know that like the GitHub one, though, we had a bunch of feedback on. I had some feedback. I think Jordan had a lot of feedback on that. We haven't made any strides in updating that because it was like we wanted to get to version 1, which they just published a blog about or about to publish a blog about. But keep an eye on the best practices space and that working group. And then there's also the security tool belt, which is supposed to be kind of exactly what we're talking about in this meeting and this issue for developing, the best practices tool chain. And that actually is looking for a new home. It's been proposed to land that in the best practices working group, which I'm not opposed to, other people aren't opposed to, but we're like, does that maybe belong in the security tooling working group instead? And I don't know, I expect everybody to participate one way or the other, but also keep an eye on that effort, and chime in as well if, I don't know, I cannot keep track of who's in what space and who is not in what space, but I'll just post in here if you are participating in any of these spaces, there's an issue to discuss that, which I'll post in the chat.
Cool. I am getting back to the agenda here. There is one more item on the agenda if we want to move on to this one. This is issue 53. Discuss request for information on open source software security, areas of long-term focus and prioritization. Ben, Jordan, do you want to fill us in on what we got here?
It's actually a request from Robin. So I'm happy to let Robin talk a little bit more about this. But yeah, take it away, Robin.
Yeah, well, I think Chris mentioned there's been meetings at the White House. Of course, a lot of governments are looking at security. It's starting to take shape as you go down each layer, but they've issued a request for information for people or organizations who have a particular expertise on something. And again, if we talk about sort of shaping from the bottoms up, I think this is a good opportunity for us to pick, maybe 2 or 3 areas, maybe only one, that we think that the government should look at. The nice thing is once you have something that's more in sort of a government mandate and compliance, and often federal funding comes with that too. So I would sort of look at it through that lens as well. But I'd give it a quick read, and then we can talk about it in our next Collab space meeting. I think Jordan put down some of the areas that he thought were important. So I would encourage you all to do the same. And we can hold the pen if you need be, and we can, discuss certain areas that we think are important, and then we can take a draft. I think the deadline is the end of this month, if I recall.
All
Been
right.
in a couple of days. Maybe end of September. I'd have to go back and look. I have it open.
Does it say? Comments must be received by October.
Oh, October. So yeah, we have more time.
Okay, good.
I was gonna say that seems fast. Yeah.
All right.
Speaking of the regulations and government stuff, has the Cyber Resilience Act been on the radar over here at all?
It has. We actually signed on to a letter with proposed changes early on that our board approved us doing so. Mateo has offered himself up as a resource. We can bring the Linux Foundation policy lead at Linux Foundation Europe to this group for an updated briefing, if that would be helpful. I think we talked about doing that at the CPC meeting as well, maybe. The content's getting, I don't think the story's getting better from a CRA perspective for open source, but at least the content and the collaboration is getting more, is getting better, more concise. Call to action is sometimes a little rough, but anyhow, Mirko is the person at the Linux Foundation. I'm sure he'd be happy to come present. And then if anyone is interested in being kind of a resource to speak with policymakers or anybody or sign on to things, then we can help funnel that through. But working closely with LF, Open Forum Europe, Eclipse Foundation, everybody's sort of really working together.
Great.
Cool. That's everything on the agenda. Is there anything that we didn't touch on with the OSTIF work or anything related to that we want to call out?
Starting with NVM, right?
Yeah. So I've been interacting with some OSTIF folks, and they sent a RFP draft to me a week and a half ago. And I let them know I thought it was fine. So I think I'm waiting for them for next steps, but it sounds like they're going to find a team who could do the work, and then that team will work with me to get it done. So I'm excited.
Great. Cool. That's awesome. Anything else from that area of work, or anything else that we want to talk about?
Sorry, I think I missed the beginning of that. What was that they're gonna?
So the work that so NVM, like for NVM, I applied for Sovereign Tech Fund funding to try and migrate NVM off of Travis CI onto GitHub Actions, because Travis frequently runs out of credits, and then I can't do anything on NVM like cut releases.
Yeah, ever since they got bought by private equity, it's not been a good story for Travis, unfortunately.
Agreed. But yeah, so I've migrated hundreds of projects off of Travis, but this one is trickier because I don't know very much about compiling C++ stuff and mucking with Linux internals and so on. So the hope is that whoever team they find can help me get everything on GitHub Actions, and then I will no longer be held back from releasing security fixes potentially to NVM, as well as bugs and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, we should just call out from a higher level. OSTIF is the open source
Technology Improvement Fund.
Thank you. And we're working with them as part of the German grant to do audits of important, impactful projects. And so as the first audit that they're going to do is on NVM, and part of that scope of work is going to be the migration that Jordan called out. But it's an overall audit of the entire security posture of the project. Yeah.
Then Jordan will then sort of document that experience, because it will then cascade to other projects.
Right.
Right.
The IBM public GitHub, I don't know how much of a problem it is anymore, but it was happening all the time. There, like, because Travis was used for all of the CI on the IBM public repos, and they're just like, I don't know, every week or something is like a @channel on the Slack for it, and like, oh, we're out of credits again. We're waiting to hear back from the Travis people on some new, fresh credits. So
yeah, they do eventually always give me new credits. It's just like there's only one person I can talk to, and for about a year and a half, that like it was one person, and then that person mysteriously left, and now I have one other person I can talk to, but it's like feels very fragile.
Well, the other half of the Sovereign Tech Fund is infrastructure for our projects. We started with the Node project, and going through. Ulysses has been really helpful on that with Richard and other folks from the build team. And really, the idea is, end goal, single scalable infrastructure for our projects, better negotiated sponsorships across our projects, across the LF. We have this with a number of our open source sponsorships. You're running out of credits, or you have a revolving door at some of these companies and you have to reapply. So hopefully we'll have more a kind of a unified and long-term sort of solution for folks.
Right.
Node is, been spending a lot of time, but definitely a lot of legacy, patchwork quilt of things that we're working through.
Cool. Yeah, folks on the call can jump into that meeting minutes doc and just make sure your name and GitHub handles in there. That would be great. We add the meeting minutes to the GitHub repo as a markdown file. So I will do that after the meeting. And once we get the recording uploaded, I'll include that in there too.
Question, did this fall off the calendar, Ulysses? Did you not see this on the calendar?
Yeah, I opened an issue I replied to Michael on the issue, because there is one link on the calendar and there is a different one on the issue. So I entered in the issue one and I was like, okay, so nobody here. And it was actually the calendar. So yeah.
Okay, so we need to make sure that the issue created by Michael is, okay.
Yeah, the calendar is the source of truth. I forgot that that's embedded in that thing that he generates. Got it.
Me too. I can we can get that updated right away.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks for pointing that out. All right, rock and roll. Well, we did a good job filling up our time, so that's great. Jordan and Ben, if you all start working on a document with the gaps highlighted and whatnot to keep me posted. Sure. Happy to help, but also happy to try and help steer folks towards that sort of effort.
Sometime tomorrow, I'll shoot the draft over to Joe and Ben for immediate feedback, and then as soon as they think it's not terrible, I'll shoot it to the wider group.
Sounds great. Appreciate it. All right, excellent. Well, thanks everyone. Appreciate all your time and energy, and we'll talk soon.
Bye.
Hey, Joe.
Thanks, everybody.
Joe, can you stick around?
You got it.